Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe and let's talk about the climate, immigration, Starlink, and a lot more. First, I'd like to talk to you about the immigration raids and deportations. So, the immigration apparatus has turned into what some commentators are calling the American Gestapo. And they've been shipping people out to Guantanamo, and then the first time they shipped Venezuelans to Guantanamo, and then from Guantanamo out to Venezuela, and then they brought back some non-Venezuelans back to U.S. territory, and then they did that another time or two, and now they are this time around, Donald Trump invoked the Alien Enemy Act of 1798 that applies only during wartime or invasion. So we're not at war because Congress hasn't declared war, and it is not an invasion what is happening with the immigration. So Judge Boasberg, I think the chief judge from the District of Columbia, ordered the government to stop flying these people out of the United States to El Salvador. These are Venezuelans going to El Salvador, to El Salvador's big-ass mega prison or whatever it is over there. And it is an entire mess because there's no due process being done. We don't know if these are in fact Venezuelans. They're just being rounded up and sent. We don't even know for sure if any of them are U.S. citizens. So we're talking about U.S. citizens. You remember that a 10-year-old U.S. citizen was sent away and deported with her undocumented parents when the ICE picked them up while they were on their way to go see an emergency doctor for the kid's brain cancer. The kid has brain cancer and she's an American. That's an assault on birthright citizenship. As I've said many times about birthright citizenship in the context of this immigration, is that Donald Trump will always lose the birthright citizenship substantive fight. Simply because even if, first of all, it's written in the letter of the law that birthright citizenship is a means to be American citizens. And there is no mechanism to take that away. So Donald Trump may argue that these people who are undocumented were never in the jurisdiction of the United States, when clearly the facts point the other way, because they not only birthed a child here, but also raised her in the United States. So they've been here for 10 plus years, paying taxes and working to fulfill their American dream. So instead of arguing the substance of birthright citizenship, the issue that's going up to the Supreme Court has to do with what the jurisdiction of one district court judge is to be able to block the issue of birthright citizenship nationwide. Well, technically, in the United States, there are 51 jurisdictions. And the 51st jurisdiction is the federal jurisdiction. And in the federal jurisdiction, there is a Supreme Court as enunciated in Article 3. And then there are inferior courts that are added by congressional acts that fall under Article 3 courts that all have life term sentences. And there's the district court, which is the fact-finding court, where the acquittal or conviction happens. Appellate court over that has oversight, limited jurisdiction to be able to see whether law was properly provided, was applied, and whether there were other inconsistencies or whatever the losing party raises. And then there is the Supreme Court. So there are many districts and there are many There are many districts, and there are, I believe, 13 circuits. I haven't looked. And so, and that includes the DC circuit when I say 13. So with these rulings, if it is a matter that a court is dealing with in first impression, it will always be a district court, because Supreme Court has limited jurisdiction over the cases, appellate jurisdiction over the cases, over which the inferior courts have substantive jurisdiction. So it will always start at the district court level. And so when a district court applies an order, that applies throughout until there's another district court that, say, goes against that same issue in a different case. That's how case law builds. But in the case of birthright citizenship, it is pretty clear that the government wants to say, oh, this person says in the federal jurisdiction that, birthright citizenship, going about it is wrong. You can't take away birthright citizenship, but you can apply that court's order all over the country. But unless there are opposing ideas, unless there's an appellate court ruling on of the substance of the matter, the only federal say from the judiciary, from the Article 3 branch of government, comes from that district judge, which happens to be Judge Boasberg in that time of the Alien Enemies Act. And I don't know who the judge is, who the judge was in sitting in the birthright citizenship case that is going up to the Supreme Court. So I would hope that the Supreme Court would stand by Article 3, saying, this is an issue of first impression. There's no ruling on this issue that has been brought up. We are going to, unless this comes up to appeal, this is the law. Unless there are competing, contravening jurisdictions, other venues in the same jurisdiction that creates case law that goes against this current ruling, these rulings are the rulings of Article 3 court. So they should hold the weight. It is a federal jurisdiction. It's not like it's a different jurisdiction. So this is what's going on in the immigration issue with birthright citizenship, and on the other side, in the immigration raids and deportations, where they're taking videos and, the government is posting videos of these sort of quite violent and degrading, dehumanizing deportations. And Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary to Donald Trump, said that, they can self-deport, and be part of these fun videos, or whatever her quote was. But she referred to these videos of people being forcefully taken away as being fun videos. That gives you the idea of the depravity of this administration. So with that said, I'm going to go on to the next topic, which is the climate crisis. I'm sorry, but I haven't talked about the climate crisis for a long time, simply because it is an endemic thing now that we are experiencing on a day-to-day level, where we don't realize that, temperature getting warmer and warmer, and, storms are getting stronger and wetter. We don't, because of the extreme temperature that's happening. But people don't realize it because it's happening in a broad swath of geography throughout the world. So it's very difficult to be able to frame this crisis as how the wildfires are linked to the hurricanes. This is extreme weather as a result of the breaking of certain thresholds, which we've already broken. Like last year, I think we broke the average temperature going up by 1.5 degrees Celsius, which I think it brings the globe to a tipping point where there's a cascading event that we cannot predict what the climate is going to be and what. So anyway, the climate crisis and the climate catastrophe is all encompassing everywhere. But Donald Trump is doing everything to exacerbate that. From his drill baby drill philosophy that goes into protected land to drill for oil and gas, to the current EPA plans to eliminate pollution centers, monitoring stations from poor communities, and the latest being that EPA plans to eliminate its scientific research arm, firing as many as 1,155 chemists, biologists, toxicologists, and other scientists. And the EPA director already announced deregulation happening with the EPA and more cuts coming. So essentially jeopardizing the environment that allows us to live, threatening the fresh water systems of the world, not of the world, of the country, the air we breathe that's global. Recently Donald Trump posted saying that bring back clean coal, which happens to be at this point more expensive than renewable technology. But going back to that is not the way that we want our environment to be. We don't want it to be oil wells everywhere, destruction of flora and fauna, extinction of animals, and on a personal level, air quality deteriorating, water quality not being assured in areas, chemicals going into the water from corporations because EPA is deregulating and no longer going to follow through on their application of standards for air quality, water quality. Environmental Protection Agency is going out of business, or at least slimming down, and taking with it the securities that Americans have in keeping our water, air safe so we as a society can thrive. So, next topic, I kind of want to briefly talk about this because it's important, and I think it's being sort of understated at the moment. We already saw how Elon Musk talked about stopping Ukraine, Starlink all over Ukraine, but then went back on a different post to a different person saying that he would never take Starlink away. Maniacal character who thinks that everybody's listening to him all the time. So there's no sort of coherent thought process to be said where he says, he could stop Starlink, but he won't. But the recent news is that the White House zone has been wired with Starlink, apparently for free. For free? Elon Musk is an unelected oligarch, a bureaucrat who is cutting indiscriminate parts of our government without being confirmed by the Senate, without being an employee of the government, who has billions of dollars of government subsidies that allows his failing SpaceX company and other enterprises stay afloat, is providing White House Starlink services for free? Nothing's for free. It's spare change compared to what Elon Musk is getting from American taxpayers. But he'll never talk about that. So now with having internet access into the White House complex, God knows what classified information, all of the classified information in the White House complex that goes into digital form will now be available for Starlink to hack into if they want to. And what could go wrong? And then now we see in the Ukraine front, Donald Trump is going to talk to Putin, and they're going to talk about asset division in the Ukraine invasion by Russia. Well, what is Putin giving up? Is Putin going to be giving up something that was territory of Russia before Russia invaded Crimea in 2014? Because fully restoring the assets of Ukraine, and then we can talk about Ukraine. We can talk about divvying up assets. What gives Putin the right to say that I've annexed these parts of Ukraine and therefore they are part of Russia, and American government trying to sell that to the Ukrainian people? Will they ever buy it? That's nothing more that is nothing if it is not a loss. Loss of life, loss of prestige, loss of culture, loss of character, loss of integrity, loss of patriotism, and a spit in the faces of all the people who volunteer to defend Ukraine, whether that be Ukrainians or people from all around the world who are joining the Ukrainian military to help Ukraine against Russia's invasion. Asset division? Get your ass out of Ukraine, Russia, Putin. That should be the peace deal. Get out of Ukraine. It's as simple as that. Why is that so difficult to do? I want to talk, we're going to getting to the end now. I'm going to talk about how Donald Trump is defying the courts, sending the migrants away, even when the court ordered otherwise, at not releasing money ordered by the court to be released. Not enforcing these court orders is a slippery slope. And they're playing, footsie with the judicial system, with the courts, by saying, oh no, we didn't really, it was a verbal order, not a written order. We didn't violate the order. They were already out of U.S. jurisdiction by the time the order came down. Well, if you follow the law, the jurisdiction of those people and the plane going, they need to turn their ass back around and get back to the jurisdiction where they are in court for. You don't have the right to interpret a judicial order. And Mark Elias went up and made a brave argument, which I think is a strong argument, that courts have a way to enforce their orders even when the executive government does not. And I hope that courts pick that up, which is civil contempt. And they can use other resources other than the Marshal Service and federal sources, which they can deputize to then enforce the court's orders for civil contempt. So the court can hold the government in civil contempt, can hold the lawyer in civil government lawyer in civil contempt. It can enforce laws that it applies in each particular case when it goes up to the district court. In order to enforce it, you can use other resources. And I think that there's an argument there that is jurisdiction bending, where the federal courts go to state resources to be able to enforce their orders. But that's a constitutional crisis. Like, what if SCOTUS has to go to the National Guard of Maryland, or the governor of Maryland to Westmore, or has to go to the governor of Virginia to ask them to enforce the order of stopping these raids from happening, or bringing back the citizens of the United States who have been wrongfully shipped out, like this 10-year-old brain cancer patient who is an American citizen. Where is their due process? Where's her right to life, liberty, and property, and the pursuit of happiness? Where is it? So Donald Trump is already assaulting our courts. Already. And everybody is still quiet about it because it hasn't gotten to the point that the Supreme Court has ordered him to do something and he has defied it. But his modus operandi shows nothing that is stopping him from defying a Supreme Court order as well. And then the Supreme Court has to go around and look for enforcement agencies that can use their resources to enforce the Supreme Court's order because Donald Trump will tell the Marshal Service to stand down. We are ever more close to that sort of scenario becoming reality. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. Last thing I want to tell you about this whole thing about the biological gender thing. Well, generally there are two genders, man and woman. We look at the woman as XX in a chromosome. XX chromosomes is women, and XY chromosome is male, physically male, and physically female. But biologically speaking, there is the XX possibility of you being a woman, the XY possibility of you being a man, the XXY possibility where you are a man who has Klinefelter syndrome, who has lower levels of testosterone. You can be an XYY, which comes with you being taller and having other attributes. And there's XXX, where women are also, there's this superwoman sort of quality of that being taller, more muscle capacity, but with it comes other physical infirmity. So biologically speaking, there aren't two genders. Genotypically speaking, there are not two genders. There are at least 4, 5. So when the conditioning on sexuality happens, when children are very young, parents become responsible. And how many parents do you think are going around saying, okay, you can be an XX or an XY or an XXY or an XYY or an XXX. Whatever you want to be. No, we are generally conditioned in a way where we have to conform to social contracts and social stereotypes that reinforce a conditioning. And breaking those norms is what makes you the other and becomes part of the LGBTQAI plus community. So when we go to the courts about sexuality, which we're going to because the discrimination on the basis of sex that's happening in the transgender community, that is being perpetrated by Donald Trump and the federal government, is a discrimination on the basis of sex and a deprivation and a violation of equal protection under the Fifth Amendment. And so it should be recognized that there aren't just two biological sexes. How we teach our children, the grooming starts at home. And then there are families that just let their child organically grow, where they don't stop a child from keeping a flower in their room, where they don't stop a boy from playing with girls' toys. There are families like that. There are a lot more families who get upset if boys start playing with girls' toys and girls start playing with boys' toys. But there are many who allow that to happen. So unless the government is going to go out and genetically test everybody who fall outside of this biological XXXY, XXY, XYY, XXX variation, you are violating transgender people's right to vote. Transgender people's rights, when you encumber them, when you ban them from the military, when you say that having information about them or programs about them will cause federal funding to go away from state schools, these things create an discrimination against transgender people on the basis of sex, because they don't identify as either XX or XY, which is woman or man. They identify as something else. And the court, biologically and historically, will look and find there being an other sex other than the biological man and the biological woman. So when it gets to court, I wanted to talk to you about this now, that the concept of sexuality is conditioned into us. And we have to deal with each individual child in their own way of how they develop, instead of imposing and superimposing on them ideas that are reinforced in society that go against what comes to them naturally. So before you blame people for grooming your children in schools, remember what you are conditioned with and how you as a parent is conditioning somebody to force to be one way or the other way, when nobody really knows in full truth how many different ways somebody can be or is genetically and phenotypically, the way that they look. So the point is, end the prejudice. This has been a long episode, and I'm sorry about that. I'm thankful that you've stuck around. Please like and subscribe. My hair is gone, and I will talk to you soon.